In this video I'm going to show you how I've built myself a very large shelf for my garage. This is going to be a thin shelf but fairly sturdy. I've used a 6 meter long piece of steel, and here you can see me measuring it up and then cutting it. So at this point I've just cut the two long sections and I left the leftovers just on the side because I wasn't sure how deep I was going to make this shelf. And later on I decided that to just save on the metal I would change the design slightly. Here you see that the metal is a bit rusty, so what I've done was I picked up my angle grinder with a sandpaper disc, and I just sanded down all of the rust, and you can see how shiny it is now. At this point I've realized that I was just going to split this remaining piece of metal and cut it in half to make the depth. So I've got a 2.75 long and a 25 millimeters deep frame. And here I'm just putting together the metal, preparing to attach it all together, preparing it to weld later. And you can see I'm wearing some glasses, which those are glasses with a camera, where I intended to make a first-person view recording, but I've decided that they were aiming down too far and you couldn't really see what I was trying to show, so they were kind of useless. In here I'm just setting up the welder and making sure that I can weld, and this has been just cut a little bit, you don't see the full weld, you just get the idea of what was happening. A little bit of bitting out the slag and such. And now I have the metal frame that I needed for my shelf, and because I wanted to protect this, I've used a bit of the hammerite paint that I had left over from the different project. And this specific one I've watered it down a little bit because I didn't need to have a very strong hammerite. And you can see me using just some cardboard boxes to avoid painting the floor. Lovely time lapse. It's a shame that with this camera you can't actually see the difference of the phone. And here's what I've used for the top shelf, or the top of the shelf. I just picked up a pallet, and I had a pallet that I've already made into a frame, so I'm just taking it apart here. This is a technique that I usually use, but I had the wrong type of hammer, so afterwards I've decided that in order to just speed up the process, and because I had enough wood, I was just going to use the saw. And here I'm just cutting the wood into 30 centimeter segments, so the shelf itself will be roughly 27 centimeters long. And you see I've lined up all of the pieces of wood, and the thicker wood is on one side and the thinner is on the opposite side, and here I'm just gluing everything together with some wood glue. And you see every now and then I use the drill in this time lapse, because what I've done is I hooked up one end and then pushed everything together and drilled through and kept everything under pressure using the nails. And here I'm just cleaning up all of the wood using the angle grinder with the sandpaper attachment, and you can see the difference. It's quite nice. And in order to make sure that I had a perfectly level shelf, I then cut all of the wood segments using a guide in my saw, which gave me a perfect rectangle. And you can see here I'm measuring exactly the size that I want, and the position of my guide. Now, while I was doing this, I realized that the guide was bending a little bit, so it was difficult to use it as a guide to push the saw against it. And you'll see later that I've put some weight on it just to keep it touching the wood, so I could make it as a guide. And this is just me making the linings for the rear guide, and this is completely flush with the metal, because this is a part of it that goes against the wall. And you can see me using my toolboxes just to put some weight onto the metal guide to make sure that I can use it better. And this is a very poor shot now, obviously. You just have to trust me that I have a very good line there. And after I'd cut the wood, I've picked up my angle grinder again, and I have smoothed all of the edges of the wood, so that when reaching for anything in my shelf, I wouldn't get hurt with, you know, any sharp edges or any splinters. So this is effectively the shelf ready, and I've just flipped the shelf around and made sure that I was going through, you know, all of the sharp edges. And there's the shelf done. This took me all morning actually. I think I was done with the shelf at about 3 in the afternoon. And here's myself and my brother fitting the shelf. The shelf was made exactly to measure, and it was quite difficult to fit because it was tight. And you can see this is a 10 times faster speed when we were fitting, and it still took us quite a while. We had to remove and add back the supports on the sides a couple of times just to make sure that everything was in place. And there was plenty of discussion about how to go on about fitting this. I have a girder in my garage, as you can see in the black side from the right, that beam, and I had to cut the wood a little bit in the edge, and you can see me now doing it. And this is because the wood was pushing against the girder and it wouldn't allow the shelf to go in place. So after trimming that little bit out, we managed to proceed. So you can see this is just the end of the fitting, with my brother tightening up all of the screws. And if you like this video, go ahead and, you know, put a like on it, because it's nice to know that people enjoy my videos.